We're going to turn now to another controversy, this one over the Boy Scouts. Have a listen.
My attitude is that gays and lesbians should have access and opportunity the same way everybody else does in every institution and walk of life. And you know, the Scouts are a great institution that are promoting young people and exposing them to you know, opportunities and leadership that you know, will serve people for the rest of their lives. And I think that nobody should be barred for that.
Welcome back to Opinion Journal. I'm Mary Kissel. You just heard President Obama, who is the honorary chairman of the Boy Scouts, basically encouraging the group, some say bullying the group, into accepting gay members. Now, the Boy Scouts have delayed their decision until May. But what does this mean from a legal point of view? There's a fine balance here. Hoover Institution fellow Richard Epstein joins me now. Richard, this is a tough line to draw between the freedom of association and freedom from discrimination. How have the courts typically walked this line?
They've walked it only with great difficulty. In general, they try to draw the following distinction. On what you would call sort of economic issues, the usual answer is that the anti-discrimination laws apply, and it applies equally in competitive industries and monopolistic ones. But when it goes to certain kinds of intimate or expressive activities, the case of Dale, decided in 2000 by the Supreme Court, by a 5-4 vote, I might add, said that on expressive activities, things go in the opposite direction.
What do you mean by expressive activities, Richard? Speak English to me.
What do I mean by expressive activities? I'm telling you what they mean by expressive activities. Essentially, it means activities that have to do with a point of view, philosophical or otherwise, a way of organizing your private life. It covers religious experiences. It covers intimate personal relationships. And it's essentially defined as those things which are important to your self-identification, which are not related in any direct and immediate way to your economic well-being or commercial affairs. This is a fine line because many people regard work as their expression in life, right? And many people who in fact are in religion think that they have a view about the way in which the entire world ought to be organized.
Well, that's just it. There are two sides here. There's the gay activists who say we should be able to get into any institution, civic organization like the Boy Scouts that we want. But there's also the Boy Scouts and traditional institutions and their rights to organize the way that they want to be organized. What about the Scouts' rights here?
Well, that's the point. And so in the Supreme Court, the Scouts won 5-4. And it was held that First Amendment freedoms of association dominated the public so-called compelling state interest. And there are a long line of cases going back about 25 years in which nobody's quite sure as to where the line ought to be drawn. And I think the correct answer to your question is we ought not to draw it at all. So when I wrote about this thing in 2000, I took the modest position, don't worry about the line, worry about the important line in these areas, which is if you have a monopoly institution that is the only place that people could go for given services, you have a non-discrimination obligation. But if it's a series of competitive institutions, they have as much right to organize their affairs as you do. And that the president, therefore, as a matter of sort of legal theory, is surely wrong when he says that everybody has a duty to take in everybody. And in fact, many gay groups do not want to take in people who do not share their particular beliefs. This has been a very delicate and contentious issue. So the way I think about it, in the simplest fashion, is that the questions here should be matters of moral suasion, and the correct answer is if the Scouts want to go this way, those dissenting groups will essentially leave them and form their rival organization, and you will then see a split, and each group will be more homogenous than it would otherwise be.
That's a very, very important point, because when you talk about monopoly, it's not as if Boy Scouts is the only group that young boys can join. As you say, the market, there's a competitive market out there to attract boys in for these sorts of camping activities or whatever it is that they do there in the Boy Scouts. So is that then the president is constitutional scholar, not really understanding our constitutional rights?
I don't think he's talking about constitutional scholarship. If you listen to the remarks, you can't tell whether they are questions of entitlements or exhortations. As a matter of exhortations, I think they're right. And if he's the honorary chairman of the Scouts, it's going to have some influence on them. But you have to understand the depths of the difference on this particular issue. For those people who have biblical orientations, the definitions of marriage and of proper sexual conduct are matter of divine origin. For those people who essentially are more secular in their views, they regard what the Scouts regard as immoral as being a transcendent and a highly protected experience. It's very difficult to find the middle ground between those people who insist that the traditional definitions be followed and those people who insist that they be overturned. And I don't think that the Scouts will be able to stay together. They're trying local option, because you will not be able to keep New York chapters in the Scouts if in fact you allow Utah mentalities to govern the situation. And I don't think that that's going to in the end go, because there'll be too many things that have to be decided in common. What do you do when there are national retreats drawing people from all states? And it may well be that the better thing to do is to have Scouts 8 and Scouts B, because they are surely losing now. I mean, make no mistake about it. In blue states, the membership is down for the very simple reason that there are too many people who have gay children or are sympathetic with that or support gay rights, who don't want to have any part of an institution on this issue becomes the litmus test. So they're in a very delicate position. I sympathize with people on both sides. I mean, I'm certainly, as a constitutional person, strong believer in individual association, and as a person I tend to be socially more liberal. And so therefore I would much prefer the Scouts to do other things, but I don't believe that my preferences should dictate to them the way in which they organize their own internal affairs.
Well, that will have to be the last word. Hoover Institution fellow Richard Epstein, thank you so much for being with us. Hope you come back again very soon.
My pleasure.